If you don't know how to hold a boundary, your teenager will show you. Hey, it's Heather Chauvin, wife, mother of 3 boys, former social worker, dreamer, recovering rescuer, stage 4 cancer survivor. I started my motherhood journey when I was 18. I was single and living off government assistance. Beyond all of these titles and labels, I'm a human being, just like you, attempting to navigate it all while feeling good. My goal on this podcast is to show you that you can live an energized, sustainable life, both at home and in your work. On this show, I attempt to keep it real with stories, interviews, and random thoughts. This is not a business or career podcast, and it's not a parenting podcast. It's both and so much more. You will laugh, you will cry, and maybe even get a little frustrated with the truth you've been hiding from yourself. I believe all human behavior is a language, whether it's through your child's behavior, your health, or a relationship. And when we learn to listen instead of react, we begin to understand what it truly means to feel alive and in control. If you haven't already, go grab a copy of my book, Dying to Be a Good Mother. You can purchase it wherever books are sold online. And if you're interested in how to integrate this work into your life and get quicker results, you can learn more about my mastery and mastery business coaching experiences at heatherchauvin.com/work with me. Heather Chauvin, CHAUVIN.com/work with me. And you have a personal question or a topic you'd like me to answer on this podcast, then text me 313-710-5199. 313-710-5199. All right, let's change your life. Let's dig in. All right, I'm back. If you haven't noticed, you may see that there are more podcasts being put out by me recently. And podcasting for me is, I'm a verbal processor. I love speaking. It's one of my favorite things to do. Give me a microphone, put me on stage. Even though it's exhilarating and terrifying, I love it. Put me in a dark room and ask me to write a book. That feels awful. And both are growth opportunities and experiences, but I love to challenge myself. And so I challenge myself to do a podcast a day for a minimum of 30 days. I did this a few years ago, and I was going to do a whole year, and I ended up missing maybe 2 weeks or something like that. And the reason why I do it is self-serving. I love it when things are a win-win. So of course you get more content from me, but it allows me just to process, to write out my ideas, to get them out. And I just love speaking and I love coaching. Those are my areas of genius. So the more of it you do, you strengthen those muscles, right? So when you get so tight and restrictive on, I got to have a plan and I got to follow the plan and I got to have a strategy, you begin to actually sabotage yourself. And so sometimes you just got to crinkle up the plan and you got to throw it out the window. And when I get too structured, it is actually detrimental to my creativity and my process, which is very counterintuitive to what everyone tells you about being organized and all of that. So I love planning. I love a good list. I love teaching people about my energetic time management process. But my thing is, I'm not attached to it. My worth is not in the plan or the strategy. And you have to play this balancing act of, knowing when to stick to the strategy when it really, really sucks because you have to follow through and break through that upper limit barrier. But also knowing when to let go of the plan and to get back in alignment. So it's an intuitive trusting. And that only happens with taking action and putting things out there. So if it's of service to you, you will hear more of me. This month, I'm going to be doing some live coaching. And if you want live coaching, head on over to the text messaging app, 313-710-5199. 313-710-5199. Text me. And I'm picking a select few of the podcast listeners, and we'll be gifting them a coaching session, which only my high level clients get one-on-one coaching with me. So this is about you understanding, today's podcast, the importance of boundaries. I can't tell you how many times people say to me, I suck at boundaries. And I'm like, don't we all, right? Like, holding a boundary is incredibly emotionally uncomfortable. It's one of those things that it's a life skill that we're not taught until we need. And sometimes we're modeled boundaries by people, but oftentimes the boundaries that we're modeled haven't been in alignment with authentic leadership, right? They haven't been healthy boundaries. Those people have been mean, they've cut us off. Our perception of that, like the stories we have around boundaries of like, oh, I'm being mean. Oh, that's so rude. I could never do that. Or I'm a people pleaser, or I don't want to disappoint anybody. And the truth is that when we don't have boundaries, it's a lose-lose situation. I've talked about boundaries many times on this podcast. But what I mean by it's a lose-lose situation is if you are radically honest with yourself, not having a boundary is discounting yourself, and it's also discounting the other person. So you might be saying yes to something, or you might be overriding one of your boundaries, but you are not holding that person accountable to their higher self. You're also not holding yourself accountable. And unless you are really determined to live an authentic life, to live a healthy lifestyle, you won't implement boundaries. Like, just plain as day, I'm just going to be honest with you. The reason why I say that is because people message me all the time and say, what's your quick tip? What's your strategy for how to hold a boundary, right? And I will tell them, write out a list of what doesn't feel good. Like, we all know what doesn't feel good, what's not working, where we're gaining a little bit of anger or resentment in our lives, in our personal and professional lives. So just write it out, like write out the list. But again, they won't create this time or the space to write out the list. So right there, they're putting up a block to their success. They're like, oh, that's uncomfortable. And I'm like, yes. And this process is going to continuously be uncomfortable for you, emotionally uncomfortable. So if you're not willing to get emotionally uncomfortable, you're not going to be able to implement a boundary, because it's only going to get more intense from here. So I'm going to talk about my teenager in a second, about what he's teaching me about holding boundaries. But you got to write it out. You got to write out like, this isn't working, this isn't working, this isn't working. And then I want you to write out the opposite. So what would be the ideal situation? I'm going to use, you'll hear the one with my son, but let's use work as an example, okay? I'm going to pretend that you work in corporate and you work a 9-to-5 job. Most people these days work, I'm making this up, but like, let's say you work 9-to-5, but you're not actually working 9-to-5. You're working like 7-to-10. And the work hours become blurred because you're working from home. You take work home with you, and you do, you just blur these lines because you're like, I got to get it done. That's what you tell yourself. I got to get it done. But what if work legit stopped at 5 p.m. for you? And you held that boundary and you were like, fuck no, I am not going to work after hours. Like, I'm not going to do it. Or if I do, I'm going to be taking another day off because I need rest. I need restoration so I don't burn out. Because when you're in this cycle, you're actually like leaking productivity because you're just working, but there's no energy there. There's no recharge. So it's not quality work. And it's terrifying you have to be able to sit with your fear and your guilt to look at it and to say, oh my God, if I stop at 5, then I have to actually feel my feelings, which are going to be this fear of disappointment, this fear of not getting it done, this fear of being fired, this fear of whatever it is, whatever your fear is, you have to sit with the fear when you implement the boundary. So now I'm going to talk about a teenager. So my children are 16, 11, and 8. And every stage in parenting teaches you something different. And the second your child gets to that new developmental phase, first of all, if you go into parenting thinking that controlling everything is going to be easy, good luck to you, because that is a recipe for disaster. And that is why I think so many women struggle with postpartum, because especially with their first child, because they don't know what to expect. And then also there's these behavioral tendencies, these personality traits. And also we live in a culture that's like, help is weakness, help is weakness. So if you actually believe help is weakness, then you're going to be shaming yourself and being like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? When the truth is, there's nothing wrong with you. The problem is with society. The problem is with the culture of who you need to be as a woman. So there's no shame in not knowing how to hold a boundary. There's no shame in not knowing how to create space for yourself. There's no shame in not knowing how to take care of yourself when we live in a culture and a society that's like, do more, push, 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 push. And women are overcompensating for equal rights and equal opportunity. And what we're not doing is saying, hey, I'm not a man. I can actually do this completely different. And then when we declare that we have needs, oftentimes other people do not understand our needs. And they say, you don't need help. You don't need help. Meanwhile, your insides are screaming at you saying, yes, I do. Yes, I do. So you're going to hear me say this probably on the daily. Asking for help is not selfish. Asking for help is courageous. And it takes courage to seek support in any area of your life. And I highly recommend it. Every time I'm struggling with something or I'm challenged with something, I look around and I say, who has solved this problem in their life? And I'm going to hire them to help me. And I started doing that when I had no money, and I just kept reinvesting. So my hope for you is that you say, wow, I'm really struggling with this. I'm going to hire somebody to help me. I'm drinking something at the same time. So if you hear me taking breaks, that's why. Okay. Teenagers. I'm telling you right now, younger children years were preparing me for the teen years. First of all, I always say your child's behavior is a language. I want you to imagine, go back to your teen self. I want you to imagine how emotionally, physically, mentally, and spiritually uncomfortable you were in your prime as a teenager. I don't even know if I would go back to those years if somebody gave me a shit ton of money. I don't know. Well, maybe if I could go back as myself now with my wisdom and my life experience. But if they were like, you forget all your wisdom and you just have to go right back into that version of you, I don't think anyone could pay me enough money to do that. That was incredibly painful. So first and foremost, if you have a teen in your life, I want you to gain empathy for that child, compassion. That must effing suck, right? So much going on in their development. But here is where boundaries come into play. The number one thing that I hear from parents, and I've said this myself, is you can see the potential in your child, and they're not going to live up to their potential because, they're in a different life phase and, they're experiencing it all. So the more you understand about emotional intelligence and feeling in control of your big emotions, fear, anxiety, resistance, overwhelm, you then can become the role model. And it is actually way less triggering because you get to see, oh, I know what's happening for them. So we're still in the middle of a lockdown here in Canada. And routine is very important. Not only for my mental health, but my family's mental health, because the second, I can be flexible with routine, but there has to be some baseline routine, because when there is no routine, it gets way out of whack. And I notice that mental health just goes all over the place. So, I've played both sides of the coin where it's like, I'm not super, super structured, but it's like I need some structure and flexibility. So we do have some baseline rules in our home, and the morning is really important. Get up, take a shower, eat breakfast, if go outside for a walk or a bike ride, do something to move your body, and then start your day. And then typically around the 10 to noon time, it's like do some work and then lunch. And then if you're done the capacity of your work, you can have the afternoon off. And like, that's easy. But I do notice that when the morning routine slides, then the misery drags on for the rest of the day. So I've had to have serious discernment and serious conviction in my own being to hold this boundary for a child who does not want to hold the boundary. There is a quote that I use again and again and again, and this beautiful analogy by Josh Shipp, Shipp. He has a book on teenagers. And I really enjoy listening to Josh Shipp talk, because he mentioned something around, first of all, he was a child in foster care. And his quote is something about like, every child, no matter the situation, is just one caring adult away. And I want to be that caring adult for my children and other children. And I just want to care, and I want to take a stand. It's just in my bones. It's a desire that I have. It's just, I don't know, I'm very called to take a stand for children, regardless of how much they hate me, because the pushback and resistance. So he says this, but then he used the analogy, especially as a teenager. He's like, listen, when you go on a roller coaster and there's that lap bar, right, that you put on your lap. What's the first thing you do when you're about to go on a roller coaster ride? You hold on to that bar and you wiggle it, right? Because you want to make sure it's going to hold you. You want to make sure that it is going to hold you. And that's what you do, because you want to make sure that you're safe. As a parent of a teen and any child on the anywhere on the child development spectrum, you are the lap bar. Your children are there to shake you and to see if you will hold them. To see if you will hold them. If you ream the bar and the bar opens, you don't feel safe. You're like, I'm going to die on this ride. Right? Your belief in the roller coaster ride is that bar is locked in and it is not going anywhere. It is not going anywhere. And the whole time you're just like, your only belief is like, this bar has got me. This, like 99% of your whole being is freaking out. And probably having like adrenaline and whatever. And that 1% is like, you're putting your belief in like, this bar has got me. This bar has got me. This bar has got me. You are that 1% for your child, especially a teenager who is on this emotional roller coaster of life, shifting from childhood to adulthood. And it's like a roller coaster for them. And they're going to trigger the crap out of you. They're going to trigger the crap out of you. And when they trigger the crap out of you, it is your job to ground yourself and to hold that boundary. Let me repeat that. It is your job to ground yourself and hold that boundary. It is not your child's job. It is not their job to bring you happiness. It is not their job to be quiet. It is your job to figure out how to create peace in your mind and your body when there's a storm around you. You are the lap bar. So in this season of my parenting and my life, I am being reminded, and the world, I am being reminded of the importance of holding the boundary. This is leadership. This is leadership. And here's the thing. It's a win-win situation. Because when my child has the parent or parents, but at least one parent, we don't need to worry about the other partner, regardless if they're available or not. That's not your responsibility. One caring parent away, one caring adult away. You are that one caring adult. So it's my responsibility. How my partner parents, not my responsibility. I can just lead by example. I control me. I cannot control anybody else. So when I become the steady, firm, grounded, boundaried human, I feel alive. I feel energized. I feel focused. I feel, I got this. Whatever big emotions come up, the triggers, I get to process my triggers. Anger, guilt, fear. That's my responsibility to process it. My responsibility. And by results, what happens? I'm focused. I'm present. I'm not yelling. I'm not reacting. I'm like, I got you. And my child has a role model who is steady, grounded, boundaried. It's a win-win. Everyone wins when you have boundaries. Everyone wins when you have boundaries. And on a bigger scale, if I take that outside of my home, of course that affects the energy and attention I can put into my business and my clients. And then on an even bigger scale, when everything is on fire around you, when everyone's freaking out, you get to show up to the circles. You get to show up to those conversations. I actually just had this conversation with a friend the other day, and she was like, I was having a little mini panic attack, and because their business opened up again, and you showed up, and I just talked to you, and I left feeling calm and better. If I was not practicing what I preach, if I was not living in alignment, I would have added more anxiety to her and that conversation. But because of the energy that I showed up in that room, it positively influenced and affected her energy. So when you catch yourself saying, self-care is selfish, I can't invest in myself, I want you to think bigger. I want you to think about how that influences your children, how that influences your community, how that influences, you got to dig deep into your why. You got to dig deep. So my lesson, hopefully takeaway for you today is boundaries are beautiful. Boundaries are beautiful. Repeat after me. Boundaries are beautiful. Repeat after me. Boundaries are beautiful. All right. I hope today was of service to you. If it was, thank you. Thanks for listening. If you gain any value from this podcast, you are also welcome and encouraged to head on over to iTunes to review the podcast. Check out my book, No, that's not my book. My book is Dying to Be a Good Mother. Will be on Audible shortly, not yet. Dying to Be a Good Mother. You can check it out on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere you purchase books online. Dying to Be a Good Mother. We also have an open house for our signature programs. which are high-level, intensive 8 to 10-month group experiences. We have Mastery and Mastery Business for different levels of woman. And you can check those out at heatherchauvin.com/work with me. heatherchauvin.com/work with me. So excited to see you, meet you, hear from you. You are not alone. Change is possible. It all starts with you. Well, that's it. And I wanted to thank you for listening today because I truly believe you are exactly where you need to be. And now I have a favor to ask. In exchange for the value you've gained from this free podcast, I'd be forever grateful if you would leave us a review on iTunes. Share the show with at least one woman in your life who you feel would benefit, and or take a screenshot and share it on social media. And always feel free to tag me at Heather Chauvin. The world does not benefit from your guilt and fatigue. The world needs more women who are willing to unlearn everything they've been taught. Women who are courageous enough to feel good and not let guilt run the show. I believe you are that courageous woman. To see if my community and coaching is the right fit for you and your big vision, the relationships you desire, the money, time, energy that you know deep down you are capable of creating, then head on over to heatherchauvin.com/work with me. That's Heather Chauvin, CHAUVIN.com/work with me. And take the next step in the right direction. Taking a stand for how you feel means you are taking a stand for how your children show up as adults. And if you have a personal question or topic you'd like me to answer on the podcast, text me 313-710-5199. 313-710-5199. You are so worthy of feeling good. Now go do some scary shit.